Hello and welcome back to another episode of SuperCoach Insider. My name is Ben.
And I'm Chris.
And thank you for joining us for our Hawthorn, or as I call it, the Titchell podcast.
Basically, the entire podcast is centered around one player. I love it.
It is. I love
Let's
it.
do it.
So before we move on, thank you to all our subscribers on YouTube and on all our audio platforms as well, actually. So SoundCloud, Spotify, yeah, you name it. So
Twitch.
So
many.
Twitch. So many.
Twitch. What else? Stitcher. Stitch is the one.
So if you're watching this on YouTube, please hit the subscribe. It's been going gangbusters. You can also find us facebook.com/SC Insider. And Twitter, it is SC_Insider_.
And Twitch is twitch.tv/SC_Insider. We finally got it all right.
Finally got it right.
People have been searching our tags and be like, that's not true. That's not real.
It's true. Anyway, so Hawthorn, and basically the big debate is why did we get reamed on Titch being so expensive?
Some guy sitting behind a desk at Herald Sun decided to shaft everyone this year by absolutely ruining us with Titch, and I just don't really like it. It's not very fair. I don't enjoy it.
It hurts, but at the same time, it now makes it... He's not his own, which means if he was 560k, he would be in everyone's side. So I get it in that fact, because now... Instead of him being a certain starter in my side, I'm not starting him.
He's basically priced to the point where you need to be guaranteed to be averaging 115 plus 120 for the season. Now, do I think he can get to that point? Maybe. But do I think he's going to start there? No. I mean, we can probably get into a little bit more in depth, but
it is the big question.
It's a tough ask.
A quick little cheers to you, Chris. So it is 9:40 a.m. in Brisbane.
It is.
Look, hey, I'm going to go with one of these.
Why not?
It's the weekend. And
I'm having a coffee because I'm not generally a morning person, I'll be honest. But
that's true. But, Chris is paying for it, so I'm going to have a beer. Everyone?
I owe you about 12 more of those. So
and good, because you're getting empty.
Excellent.
All right, so let's have a look at the season review for Carlton. We're just talking about how Chris got some hate for ripping on Carlton.
Which, I mean, Carlton suck.
Chris, you can't be saying that, Chris. Everyone is equal unless you're in the Gold Coast.
I'm sure. Yeah, I'm sure if I was saying Gold Coast suck, the guy would agree.
Yeah, Tasmania. Move to Tasmania.
It's just because he's a Carlton fan.
Don't
rip
on
Carlton.
Don't start me on moving Gold Coast to Tasmania. There's no merit. Okay, so Hawthorn, we're actually 15th for contested possessions. So Titch, they need him, basically. So
yep, definitely.
And again, Clarko doesn't rate contested ball as much as other coaches. It's like win the contested ball to win the game, and Clarko says, F that noise.
No, he's big just on getting the game on your terms. So his entire principle is about forcing them to your will. If you're controlling the game and controlling how it flows, doesn't matter who's about contested possessions. Plus, contested possession in itself is a flawed metric because it doesn't actually... A contested ball could just be, I picked the ball up and I handballed it to someone who got immediately tackled. It's an absolutely flawed metric in that regard. It doesn't necessarily tell the whole story. But, of course, they're traditionally winning the contested possession, winning the tackles, and winning the disposal efficiency. I think those are the three most important stats in terms of if you win those three, you pretty much win the game.
Well, this year it was good to get some development in people like Warple, but for the year they were 17th in clearances and 18th for centre clearances, which... To me, is they're just hurting without Tom Mitchell. He was a beast on the inside. He gets first hands on the ball, and to come last and second last for clearances and centre clearance is a big issue. However you see it or not, if they're getting the clearance straight into the forward line, then you're relying on Sicily when he's there, or even Ben Boy McAvoy's been touted to be possibly fullback this year. I mean, you're relying on intercepts.
The biggest problem with that in its entirety now is the 666.
Yep.
So before. Clarko could load one or two extra guys back there because if you lose the clearance, doesn't give a shit. They had fantastic halfback flankers and intercept defenders that could just roll across, take the ball, and then move the ball how they want and control it behind the ball. That's what they used to do. The 666 restricts that, especially from centre clearance, of course, because the ball's going to come out. It's coming out a lot cleaner than it's ever been before because you have a lot less pressure on the ball carrier, and you only have a one-on-one defensive scenario in your defensive 50. So it's really hard to manage that, a lost centre clearance, as opposed to what it used to be.
Yep.
So I do think that will shift mentality towards, okay, now let's get our best ball winners around the ball at the centre clearance so we can stop them from getting easy goals from the 666.
I think that's fair.
I actually really like the 666. I think it's done fantastic.
I think it's a good thing as well.
Yeah.
But again, just going back to the stats here, it's no surprise that Hawks were second for intercepts.
Yep.
So last for clearances, centre clearances, well, basically, and then high up for clearances. In a lot of categories there, they were just kind of mid range. So it's
Mid-tier.
nothing surprising. Like uncontested possessions, effective disposals, they're seventh. So it's not too bad. Sixth for disposal efficiency, which I think is probably down to Clarko and their training on skills is probably better than some of the other teams.
I think they're also, that generally speaking, that most of their players, even their young players, they're all more developed.
Yeah.
They all had a couple of years in the system as opposed to just, he's a first-year player, go start playing. Yeah, that's not what Clarko does. So
No. And if anything, they're like, we'll develop you for 2 years and then we'll recruit someone that's better.
in your position.
In your position.
And then make you compete and then fight him and then trade you later.
Yeah, pretty much. we take who we want when we want. We're Hawthorn.
Yeah, pretty much.
Fourth for tackles inside 50, so that pretty much wraps up. So nothing too surprising there. High on intercepts. Yeah, so Tom Mitchell will kind of balance out, hopefully, a little bit of that. But
I think so.
Yeah, they weren't high on contested possessions in 2018 either, though,
No.
which is the interesting part.
And he does have high contested possession numbers, but he has much higher uncontested possession numbers. So I suppose with Tom Mitchell, it's not like his contested possession rate's like 55, 60% like a Patrick Cripps. It's more like a 40, 45%. So he still gets it.
And then racks up.
Exactly right. He just racks up so much of that.
Gets the handball
uncontested.
received.
Yeah.
Okay, so the 2020 draw champion data ranked them second hardest, which isn't ideal as far as that goes. They do play Brisbane twice, Geelong twice, North Melbourne twice, Port Adelaide twice, and Sydney twice.
Easy games for them.
So you look at them, not too bad, except for Brisbane, who have won, I think, the last 5.
Yeah. And Geelong has been, I think it's probably the best rivalry right now in the AFL in terms of every game is just an absolute banger. So you don't know, you can go either way.
Yeah, Easter Monday, Geelong and Hawks will be
They could win both, they
a
could
good
lose
one.
both. It's really up in the air.
Yeah, but the good thing is they don't have no back-to-back interstate trips this year, which is pretty good. And they do leave Victoria 9 times, but 4 of those are in Launceston.
Yep.
So, realistically, it's not too bad for them as far as, their structure goes for the year. The good thing is, though, is that the games in Launceston, they play Fremantle, Gold Coast, Port Adelaide and Sydney.
4 easy wins.
And I would, and in Launceston, Hawks are harder to beat unless you're Brisbane. Well, they're at money side
True.
at the moment. I gotta tweak something. Yeah, Fremantle, Gold Coast, Port and Sydney. So I actually racked those up as 4 possible, highly likely wins in Launceston. So for me, it's kind of like the Hawks. I see Titch improving their lists, and I see them coming just outside the 8th again. I see them coming in around that 10th sort of mark.
I think there's there's 4 or 5 teams that can make those last 2 spots in the 8. Hawthorn are definitely one of them. Why? They've got the best coach in the league. There's one. But they are also adding list depth every single season.
Well, and they're a team. It's not like, yes, you have Titch
never
or
write
whatever
them
have
off.
you, but it's kind of like they work. No, you can't.
They're in every game.
You can't
They're
write them
in every
off.
single game. So
The year we thought they were going to probably slide, I think they came 4th. And it's like, how did they come 4th?
just literally coaching. So
Yeah. So that's pretty much it for that. List changes. Birchall went to Brisbane. Roughhead retired. Pitney went to Carlton. A whole lot of other ones that probably aren't really relevant at all. The big ins, though, and they're outs that are like fringe or old.
Yep.
You deal with that. Whereas ins, Sam Frost and Patton. So Frost from Melbourne, Patton from GWS.
Patton's a big one.
Huge, yeah. And Frost will give that depth as well in that back line. So it should be interesting there.
Patton's a straight swap for Roughhead, pretty much.
Patton's a big one.
Yep.
Yeah. So Patton really brings a lot. He can also tap out in the ruck if needed, depending if they go with a McAvoy or going in that line.
I still believe that Patton can be absolutely anything if he can get his body right. He's just so good. And we saw glimpses of how good he can be at GWS, but we never really got consistency out of Patton. And that's what I think is great about the Hawthorn medical team. They've been able to get Jaeger O'Meara on the park for an extended period of time. They've just got a long history of getting injured players from other clubs into their environment, into their medical facility.
Yes.
And bang, all of a
Well,
sudden
Scully
they turn
was
around.
meant to never run again. You know what I mean? And then he played like 21 games or something or other. Jaeger O'Meara came in there with an absolute shamble and yes, took his time.
Yep.
But he's played, 2 seasons basically straight and 21 games a season or something or other as well.
Exactly. So
He's been highly
pretty
durable
impressive.
since coming back. Seeing you are on Patton, though, I will skip ahead. He was one of my breakout contenders. A few people have tried to look at him for in that forward spot just because if they play Darcy Cameron at ruck 3, then maybe they need some kind of backup. And look, I don't think there's much meat on the bone. He could be a lot, and I would not be surprised if he averaged 90 or even high 80s. But again, there is that risk-reward liability. He is 337k though, so you are pitting him against a Devon Smith, who apparently is about 55% owned now. Devon, stupid. And like your Jack Stevens and that kind of type,
exactly
around
right.
the price mark.
I see him as backup if you're going Jacobs, but I don't see him as worth it if you're going Gawn. So if you're going Jacobs, having that instead of a Smith on your or a Steven is a valid selection because you've got the backup there. But I don't see him as someone that you want there. If Gawn goes down, you're probably sideways trading him to the next available, right?
Yep.
And both Gawn and Grundy have proven that over the last few years that they can basically play 20 to 22 games a season. So if you've got a Darcy Cameron that is playing or someone like that, do you really need to...
I think that's the key though. If Darcy Cameron plays, you could just go set and forget and have that player, right? If you go Jacobs and Darcy Cameron's playing, then you're actually still looking in a pretty good position.
Yeah, that's true.
It's an interesting one. But here's a good thing on Patton, though, is that if he can get his body right, I wouldn't be surprised to see him average well. He just needs consistency. But the benefit is that he might, if he does, have a big game. He's hit games of 159 and a 156 and a 118 before. So if he has a big game, his price will go through the roof.
And those were games where he's going to be playing the exact same role that he is at Hawks. He's going to be playing the full forward who pinch hits in the ruck. And when he's in the ruck, he's actually really good. He's got such a big frame that he can win hitouts just by bullying the other ruckman. He's a huge guy. So on the ball, he's actually quite serviceable.
Yep.
So
I think it's interesting. It depends
I
on how...
I like him at Hawthorn a lot, hey?
Well, it depends on how they use big boy McAvoy, to be honest, because a report came out saying that he might be playing in the back line. He did go back late in the year, taking a lot of intercepts. A lot better than everyone thought he would be. It's like, what's Bean Boy McAvoy doing there?
I don't think that's going to be happening. I think that what they're more doing with that is he will be the number one ruck, but like Gawn does, instead of moving forward and pushing forward in contests,
he might go back.
He pushes behind the ball to stop the ball from coming out. And that, in my opinion, ruckmen should be doing that a lot more than pushing forward. They're much more valuable in defence, cutting out opposition goals rather than pushing forward and creating a contest where you just...
Yeah, in the forward line, if it hits...
Too much space.
Well, in the forward line, if you're a big boy, right, you can mark it, but if you kick like Gawn anyway, they're saying you're better off just, instead of it coming to your feet and then a ball running away, you can be that one kick back or two kicks back. So that way, if they try and clear the ball, then you're in a prime position to get a mark and then offload it for a kick back.
There's two things that it does, which was really important for AFL football, is that, first of all, if you're a defender or an on-baller and you get a loose ball in the defensive 50 and you look up and all you can see is a 200-centimetre giant in the distance, first of all, that's inferred pressure. Because they think, oh shit, I can't kick it over them. They're outmatched by a guy that's really tall is likely to mark the ball. So then all of a sudden he starts second thinking where his ball's going to go, and that's inferred pressure.
Yeah.
So then he tries to turn back inside, bang, gets tackled, holding the ball, whatever it is.
Shot at goal.
I think it's much more important in today's game to have a ruckman behind the ball than in front. And generally speaking, talls don't win games anymore. It's very unlikely. Something like, Big O did this twice during the season. I thought it was fantastic. He went forward and he took 3 massive contested marks and kicked 3 goals in like 5 minutes. He did it twice this year.
Yep.
That sort of thing just does not happen in AFL football anymore with big talls. They're not going to really dominate a game in 5 minutes or 10 minutes of football. So, again, behind the ball, I think they have much higher impact on the game. Leave the forwards and leave the full forward to a space for the smalls to work with and put pressure on the defence. Yep. And then have your guy behind the ball.
Yeah, I see. Someone like Patton at full forward, if the ball goes into the forward 50, I'd much prefer to say, if that ball's in the forward 50, you're the ruck.
Yep, absolutely.
You know what I mean? And then that way, have him sitting behind. That way, not only that, you actually save the legs a little bit of the ruckman, because he then works from the forward 50 all the way back into defensive 50.
Yeah.
And you get that little bit of a zone where you can actually rest. If the ball goes in the 50, you rest and you set up behind. Someone else takes the tap work up front.
I absolutely agree. The other thing I'll say is that defenders are getting shorter and shorter and shorter. So fullbacks,
especially if you're at Richmond.
Yeah, like the average height of like a fullback is like 192, 193 now.
Did you get the Richmond joke?
Yeah,
short.
I get it.
Thank you.
No, it was good. It was decent, but it wasn't good gear like it used to. It was all right. It was like average gear.
Well, I think maybe it was so short it went over your head. That was better than my original joke. Okay, right, okay, fair call. All right.
But yeah, so with fullbacks and fullbacks and halfbacks, they're all the same size. You have like a one-size-fits-all fullback. Whereas, years gone past, fullbacks were a lot taller, a lot more cumbersome. Now it's about being smaller, agile, a higher jump, and more closing speed.
Well, if Caleb Daniel can get a game, anyone.
So what I mean by that is that, even that, they're still not being able to take big grabs anymore, even though they're so much shorter. So because people are chopping off and peeling off and chopping the forward.
Yep.
So again, I don't see really the value in pushing forward as a ruckman as much as it is sitting behind and helping out your team.
Okay, well, you can apply that to all the rucks because that's some great insight coming from Chris and yours truly.
You're welcome.
Okay, so Tom Mitchell, let's go break down the stats a little bit more. He is a 530k mid, so essentially
630k mid.
630k mid, sorry.
530.
Yeah, I wish it was about 530. 70k more than we were probably expecting.
Yep.
And that's why it hurts. But if you look at his 2018, he played 22 games. He averaged 129.1 with 90% time on ground.
Which is insane.
That's the key thing. And for coming back off an injury for his first month back, everyone knows that when you first play your first few games, and you can train all you like, but when you actually play a game and you get hit and you take all the full workload of it, you're going to pull up sore.
Yep.
And players, they notoriously talk about how sore they get after the first couple of games of footy. I don't see Titch playing 90% time on ground for his first month to 6 weeks.
I think it might be longer. I think they will definitely rate it up. It'll be like he'll start and it'll be 65%.
It'll be like
and then it'll be 67%.
Yeah, it'll be one to monitor.
70%.
I think it's a good one to monitor. It's like, think of it like a small man's Nick Nat. Do you know what I mean? Nick Nat, he plays small
Absolutely
amount of time on
perfect.
ground coming back from an injury. I see Titch coming in on, I don't know what the monitored minutes are. I don't know what Clarko is going to be doing. It might be, hey, let's monitor your time depending on how the game's going. If they're winning, they might tether him back. If they're losing, they might throw him in a bit more.
Do we agree at this point that he's probably playing round one at this point?
I do. I think so. He put his hand. He put his hand up for the charity game, and I think they'll hold him back because no.
Yeah, basically Hawks have said we're easing it in, but he's ready. So it's just waiting for the green light from the medical team.
They're easing it in with lube. Like a gentleman.
Absolutely, yeah. And you got to trust their medical department because they've done such a great job.
You don't second question their medical department. But the good news is that just before Christmas, he took a really positive step up in that trip at Mooloolaba.
Yep.
So he started to be integrated into full skills, which I think he said was a big thing. And they did say they were steadily increasing from January. He actually came out saying that he's kind of holding himself back a little bit in parts, which I think is smart because you want to get involved, you want to do everything, right? But coming back from a serious injury, I think they're actually being really smart about it, and they're kind of picking and choosing when he goes hard and when he's backing off.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, so we're doing this today, and like, right, okay, for this, I might actually just go half pace or do half of it.
Basically, yeah.
And then kind of
and he's not in full match sim yet.
Not yet.
But he has done some match simulation.
But I think he's smart because it's like, okay, and then for this one, they might actually look at it and then go, okay, so today we're going to do maybe 80% of this. And we're going to attack it, we're going to play ferociously, and then we'll back off and see how we go. So I think
it's a little bit of both. It's the mental side as well, and he actually touched on this in before Christmas. He actually said that the mental side of him, getting back into football is really tough because early on he was almost having nightmares about the injury itself and if he was ever going to be able to play football again and things like that.
A little bit of anxiety as well.
Yeah,
it's like you know you're going to be fine. You know you've done it before. You know you're going to be prepared. But until you get that first big hit while you're trying to kick, you're going to be a little bit anxious the night before.
Absolutely.
That's what he needs. He needs to get tackled.
And I think we are both of the opinion. You cross that line, it's game on, man. Like, if you get
the adrenaline will kick in. I honestly don't think he'll think 2 seconds about it while he's out there. But it's the build up.
He's still going to find the ball like no one else.
Well, they're going to look for him.
Yeah,
he's their best player.
So so we've decided that we've decided he's probably an upgrade target
for us. I think they have. What buy they have? The last buy.
This is my next point.
It is a good buy, and I could see value in people wanting to start him. But for me, I think I am more inclined to hope, and it's, again, hoping. We have no crystal ball here, but I'm hoping that he has monitored minutes for the first month. He starts off with 100, nice and easy. I think he's still a beast of a scorer, and I still want him. Yep. I want him. 100%.
I'm getting him.
I am more cautious on the start. I'm hoping he starts off a bit slower with some monitored minutes. Starts off with some flat hundreds, maybe even a 90 if I'm lucky. And then he's probably my first point of call. Chris is starting, I think, with 6 deep. I'm starting with 5. But my first upgrade I want is Titch.
Yep.
Plain and simple. I want him to start slow for the first 4 to 6 weeks. I'm jumping on with him having the last
I want him as well as my first. I don't know if my setup's going to allow me to do that, but we'll have a look close to the start of the season. I think it's very important to get him in before the bye because you don't want to be waiting to round 14 to get him into the team.
When he starts getting his time on ground up, and you can monitor that, he will start to score, and he is a proven scorer.
There'll be a time.
Chris, maybe
I think it might be first round of upgrades.
Maybe you should look at my structure and take take a bit
I
of
might. I still haven't really settled on a structure yet, I'll be honest. Here's the other consideration is that, yes, it's a good buy, but he shares the same buy with the Bulldogs, who there's a lot of midfields out there with a lot of Bulldogs.
And Josh Kelly.
And GWS. So if you're starting, my personal opinion is you should not go into that buy round with 4 midfielders in the same buy. Most people are starting at least 2 dogs. So you've got one of McRae, Bont, and Dunkley. Then you've got Titch and you've got Kelly. So if you've got, I think 3 of them is perfect because then you've got enough cover on your bench to float that. But if you have 4, you start to run into a little bit of issues. Definitely not 5. that would be impossible. So for me, if I'm deciding on who I want right now, I'm definitely starting with 2 dogs. And I want Titch. I definitely want Titch before the bye. So that means that I kind of cancels myself out of getting anything about Kelly. I would have to then take out one of the dogs and replace him with Josh Kelly if I wanted Josh Kelly. If you wanted Josh Kelly, 2 dogs and Titch before the bye, that's going to be dangerous around the buys to manage.
I think I'm going to do that.
You're going to do it. You're going to run the risk.
I'm going Dunkley. I'm going McRae for reliability. I'm going Kelly as my risk. And then I'm bringing in Titch. I'm going 4 deep for that buy. But I'm going to trade aggressively in those first 2 buys to make sure I have enough cover.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, it's about how many you've got on.
Well, how do you not have them? Like, what are you going to wait until after their buy to bring them in? You can't do it.
No, probably.
It's risky, but it is a strategy worth considering.
I'm not really I'm interested in Bont after the buy as well.
Bont, me too. But
the issue is
after
again. So Bont after his buy, that means you've now got.
You could have brought someone else in, and yeah, exactly.
You could have got someone 3 weeks earlier, and that's a lot of points that you're giving up in that 3 weeks.
It is.
So it's an interesting predicament. I think the one thing this year is that there is a lot of midfield premiums. There's a lot,
and there's a lot. There's about 8 midfield premiums that you could actually
bona fide say 115
say
plus.
That I reckon they'll be top 8 to 10, and there might be a couple of surprises, but genuine premium quality. Whereas you look at the defense line, yeah, right?
Yeah. There's a lot of
They're good, but will they be top 6 to 10? I think so.
There's a lot of I might average 100. Same with the forward line. Oh, I can average 95.
Well, forward line, I like 3 people. 3 people as far as I think that they will still be top 6.
And
it's hard.
The above consideration that I'm taking out of most of my preseason teams is this. Most of those guys, because it's so heavily stacked at, say, a 115 plus average, remember that when you look at averages over a 22 game period, usually what happens is they're averaging like 120, 125, and then by the end of the year, they're averaging like 115. Because a smaller sample size it means that they're going to be averaging higher in a short amount of time, generally. If you have 22 games, then over those 22 games, it sort of equalizes out. So that first 10 games that they might average 135, but then averaging 120 by the end of the year. Does that make sense? The more games you have, the easier it is to average slightly lower. So if they're averaging 120 over that time, their price isn't going to fluctuate that much. So it means that all of these midfielders that we're looking at to upgrade to, they're all going to be over 600k. Now, if you want to try and get to a midfielder that's over 600k, even at the buys,
it's hard.
You're looking at 3 trades. Like, you'd have to downgrade 2 rookies and then 1 upgrade.
Even then, Bontempelli was on a heater, had a bad game, and then we're like trying to pick him up at 560 as a bargain.
Yeah, and where do you get the cash from?
Yeah, he's 560. Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
so the only other way you're going to get that is someone gets injured and then you can sideways, which is an option. If one of your midfield just goes down, then you can just sideways to another one. But I honestly think that's why you've got to spend more money in your midfield this year, because it's going to be so hard to get to these players. They're all going to be over 600k.
Forwards and defenders are notorious for throwing out an 80.
And then you can pick up, a Rory Laird for 500k.
Or 400.
One up,
450 or something.
460.
Yeah.
The forwards and defenders are going to be easier to upgrade to. So that's why I'm thinking of starting with that one extra mid.
The consistent people, even like an Oliver, even though you don't like Oliver as much this year, but Oliver's consistent. He hits 100, 100, 100.
I don't mind Oliver in my team. I just don't want him starting my team. Because he's a great upgrade target, because he'll probably 550k somewhere during the season, but he's still going to be around about that top 10 mark.
Yeah, he could be anywhere from 550 to 600.
Absolutely. Whereas the other guys, even Bont, I can imagine Bont being over 600k when I want to pick him up, which is just annoying as hell.
Yeah, and then if there's someone else you might see a Sloan might be like 520, and then it's kind of like, he can win me some games.
Or a Ward that goes big on the back end, you can pick him up super cheap, at the buys. There's other guys in there that you'll probably get because you're just forced to. And your last, M8 or M7 usually is a cheaper option. It's not usually a top tier mid. So that's why I'm thinking of starting with a heavier midfield.
Just thinking Callan would be getting a bit of trouble if he went to prison. Callan Ward, big in the back end.
He's always big in the back end.
A little bit of subtle innuendo. Okay, so we did get a little bit off track there. However, it's just to give you an idea on how important the Hawks are, and Titch particularly with the structure. So we're talking a little bit more structure and strategy because, again, this is
I think Titch is hugely important to the year.
Well, this is the Tom Mitchell and Sick Dog podcast, basically. We haven't even touched on Sick Dog. My next premium, there's only 2 premiums. Actually, look, you know what? 3. I'm going to include Warple in that. So, Sick Dog, 509k. Patton could heavily influence the fact that Sicily won't play forward. However, again, it's the Bevo of Hawthorn. Clarko might throw Sicily forward. He was notoriously a forward to start. He was a forward.
I think it's more reliant on Jack Gunston than it is about McAvoy.
Yes. So Gunston also could swing back. Gunston being that, so you have Patton, you have Gunston, you have... who else am I thinking of?
Tim O'Brien.
Tim O'Brien was the other one, if they're in the forward line.
Here's the issue. Gunston's injured right now, and I don't think he plays round 1.
And I remember, because Chris didn't know this about a week ago.
I didn't. So...
We'll get to him.
I still think Sicily early is a risk that I'm not willing to take.
Yes.
But I do, again, I like him as a long-term defender. I think you're paying too much for him, though, for his early output.
Yeah. So I like Sicily, and I have a gut feel Sicily is going to be a good option. Look, Sicily, he averaged 100.1 before the bye, but after the bye, he averaged 87.8, and that's when he went into that forward line. I'm hoping it doesn't happen, but again, there is no certainty that his role won't change, and that's the issue.
It's the issue. And it's the worst problem than that is you don't actually know before the game starts. So the game starts, Sicily's forward, and you're like, oh, here we go. Yeah. Another 45 for Sicily.
Basically. But if they throw him in defence for a quarter, he gets like 40 points for the quarter, gets 80 for the game. And I'm like, how did that happen? Like daylight robbery. He did average 105.1 in 2018. So that's where there is value in Sicily. He's cheap. He has the last buy, which is where I think he has merit.
Yep.
But again, we're talking about, Gunston. If Gunston plays round 1, then that's a godsend. But here's the issue with Gunston is that if he is not fit or not playing, they might need someone forward for the first month, or however long it takes getting ready. And
so is that Tim O'Brien? Yeah. What? So how does their forward? And you won't know.
No, we don't know, and that's the problem. And the shit thing is,
what day do they play in round 1? Because that could be. Let's have a look.
That sounds like a job for Chris.
I think they might be playing Sunday, which won't be great.
The big thing is, and I'll get into Jack Gunston. Okay, so he came. I think he came back sore from the preseason.
They play Sunday, so you won't know before lockout what the teams are.
So the thing with Gunston is he went away. He was had some issues at the end of the season. They said, okay, rest will fix you. So he went away, took a load off his legs, right? As you do, trying to help everything. Comes back sore. So he came back sore. So I don't know, maybe he did do some training and came back. Either way, he came back into the preseason sore. And this isn't a good issue. And then basically they have a look, and then he had ankle surgery in December.
Yep.
So he's missed a big
chunk.
Lower
leg injuries.
He's missed a big chunk. He had ankle surgery in December. They said he's out for 6 weeks, and he won't come back until the middle of February. Now, if you take time off in the off season, or maybe even tried to push through or something or other, but you come back sore. You're not doing much of training to begin with. Then by the time they have it all assessed and work out a plan of action, he then has this ankle surgery in December. 6 weeks, so it was end of December. So middle of February, he's now trying to come back, and that's a hard thing to do a month before the season starts.
I'm not sure. I'm not positive that he starts round 1. Which puts a huge question mark to me on. Yeah,
because he's a mobile. He's a mobile forward. You need him mobile.
And he's a direct replacement for Gunston and Sicily are so similar in terms of the way they attack the ball in the forward line, the forward half. And they're that third tall to get up the ground.
Essentially, Sicily took Gunston's role back in defence because a couple of years ago, Sicily, Gunston was in defence. They were doing 1-2
to do, yeah.
So for me, it's for Gunston. I would be holding off in a draft league, even though he was crap to begin with, averaged 80 or 79 and change.
Yeah, but he's had a good traditional.
I don't mind
scoring.
I don't mind him as value, but you wouldn't want to pick him at a 90 average in draft. No. You'd wait, even low 80s, you'd be like, yeah, sweet, you get a Gunston.
Someone else will pick him up, man.
Someone will.
There's no way that I'll pick him up before someone else will.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. Based on the injuries, I will let someone else take Gunston, and he has a notorious roller coaster sort of ride. Yep. He might be a great trade-in target for draft, and wait for him to start horribly.
Buy low.
buy low.
Yep.
Yep, like a store that used to be around.
That's true.
Anyway, so for me, the Gunston thing does put a big issue on Sicily, and I was big on Sicily more than anyone that I know.
He was in your starting team.
He was in my starting squad, and I
Yep.
still love him, but the fact that Gunston, I think, has an impact on him
The
makes
other
me
consideration is,
less certain.
can you trust Patton to be fit for the whole season?
And then you're back to square one. It sucks.
It's
But I
just,
have it's one of
there's
those
so
risks.
many question marks on Sicily that why would you take the risk?
I can't now.
That's what I mean.
And I wanted to. I wanted to because I think his ceiling is so high, he could damage you. And he played like a lot of games this year. He played, I think he played
Let's
pretty
have a
much
look
a
at
full
how many
season.
teams he's in, because that also may be an influencing factor.
Surely his sick dog's less than 10%. The last one I'll get into is Warple, while Chris finds that information.
Sure.
He's 527k. He's a midfielder only. Not surprising, he played midfield
He did, yeah.
only throughout the year. But here's the thing. Warple as a midfielder, he got a lot of points, particularly in the back end of the year. I think he kind of took a little bit more ownership. Basically, his rise in fame came from...
20% of teams currently have Sicily.
20? Nah, pass on him.
Pass. Hard pass.
Even I like him, and even I would pass at that point.
Hard pass.
20%?
Yeah,
Fuck me.
that's so high.
Jeez.
That must mean he's one of the highest defenders.
And, well, there you go. Now bank against Sicily and hope he just has a brain fade like Toby Green and hit someone in the face.
Zach Williams is 22.
I'd rather Zach Williams over
I would.
over him at this point. Anyway, so Warple, Henderson pretty much started off really well, then dropped down. And Warple pretty much was where we thought just before the final series, essentially. So the last, 6 games or something or other. The last 7 rounds, he was kind of averaging around that 86 mark, like we said he probably would. And then it's like he just took this ownership. He had free reign. He was now the bull. Henderson was a bit more outside, I think, and averaged less. And the correlation between the two is actually quite outstanding. But he averaged 115.7 his final rounds, Warple. He went massive, which then inflated his average to a 97. So he went from an 86 being essentially, for those that brought him in, being... people brought him in at the start of the year. People brought him in at the start of the year expecting him to be a top 6 to 10.
Yeah.
And he wasn't at
A
that
lot of
point.
people traded him out.
Yeah,
And-
because he wasn't 6 to 10 at that point. And then, so for most of the season, he was actually a bad pick for those that had him. And then he comes out with a 115.7 over his final 7 rounds. Next one, he averages 97, and he's one of the top forwards.
Yep.
Just like that, all of a sudden he's a good pick. So the key thing is, though, he's a midfielder only this year, and Titch wasn't there last year. So completely for standard, don't pick him. He is 527k, so don't pick him.
I can't imagine him increasing his average, and I think it goes down slightly. I think
I think he's still a good player. I think now he's actually put himself into the mix of their midfield. But again, with Titch there, his role might change. I could see him, he might even average like an 87 to a 92. But he's not, as a midfielder now, he's not standard relevant.
No.
And he's not draft relevant at his 97 average. Let some other, Neville
If
nobody
he
or
held
rookie,
his forward status, which obviously with his role
he'd
is
be
never
still
going to
good.
happen,
He'd be good value.
he would be great value. Because I think he's still probably in that 90 to 95 range.
Yeah,
which
but
would
he
still
still
be okay.
is now overpriced.
Yeah.
And someone in draft is still going to pick him up over their inflated average. And I can't wait for someone to pick up Warple at a 97 average in draft, and I will just applaud that. I'll be like, yes, great pick. Go
Absolutely.
you. Enjoy that 87.
Good effort, boys.
Rookies, there's only a couple to touch on, so I don't want to delve in. I know we've gone on a bit longer today.
That's fine.
Matthew Walker, one to watch. He's 123k forward. And Jackson Ross, a 123k forward. These were both guys that were high picks for Hawthorn, but a high pick for Hawthorn was like
30s.
50 to 68, right? But development players, Matt Walker was pick 64, had some injuries, but he's shown a lot of promise and is highly rated internally as a forward.
Yep.
So I think they went for developmental players, some bigger guys, forwards that take a bit of time, but don't get picked high up. Jackson Ross, though, is probably more so the important one, was one of the leading goal kickers in their VFL side, but he struggled to earn his chance because they put him as a similar mold to Gunston.
Okay.
And that
So he
explains
may get
why
some time.
that explains why he was below in the pecking order. So if they rate him similarly, he might actually get some games. So for me, Jackson Ross might actually get a gig. And if he plays well, they might even find a different role
It's
for him.
all pre-season, right? So if he goes well in the pre-season, may even get a round 1 spot.
Yep. Basically, the only other mid-price contender I have, and I know people are waiting for Jago Mira to break out and average a 110, which
Never gonna happen.
I don't think is going to happen. Not behind Titch. But Chad Wingard is a really interesting one. So he's 412k. He's actually in a few sides. I can't remember the exact amount at this point in time, but he's 412k.
I was big on him last year, but he just didn't get the midfield time until late in the season.
I'm big on him this year, but the problem is that you have Jack Stephen who could probably have the same output for about 50k cheaper, and
Yep.
you could do a lot with 50k. Or I'm looking at even going even more expensive, and there's so many good options like a Heaney. I'd rather a Heaney over a winger.
Yep.
You know what I mean? I'd rather pay the extra dollars.
It's an awkward price point for the forward line because you're either I think in the forward line you're either getting
Premiums or you're getting the
premiums
mid-price.
or mid price and that 400 barrier is just that little bit too much.
Not only that,
in
he's
my
about
opinion.
80k more expensive than a Devon Smith. You
Yeah.
know? And Chad Winger could match Devon for output. You never know.
Chad could do anything because Chad's talented,
He
and
is.
it's all role related with him. And what their midfield mix is like, we won't know until round 1.
Correct. But here's where I think Chad Winger comes in handy because Hawthorn are missing that flair. They have the...
It's the X Factor, yeah.
The X Factor. They have the Pitbull, you have Tom Mitchell, you have, say, a Warple and a Jaeger Mira rotating through. They're all similar players. They're good tacklers, they're good at contested ball, they're good at getting it on the outside, but there's no flair to run through into that forward 50, particularly if you can get that handball on the outside. You have
He's the one that breaks the game open.
666. He could bust it right open. Chad Wingard could be an awesome midfielder.
He should be that
for them.
starting midfielder because I think that the rest of them are too one-paced,
Yes.
and they are too similar types.
Correct. You need someone like him to
Absolutely.
to
He
bust
should
it.
be in... he can get contested ball inside, so he can win clearances as well. But I think that he's not a winger. He's not one that gets a high accumulation possessions on a wing. He's either on the ball or he's in the pocket.
Yep.
And there's nothing in between for Chad Wingard. I don't think that he works as another type of player.
I'm with you, but he averaged 75.9 for the season, 14 games, did have injuries which affected him immensely. Got injured round 7 on 49, injured on 11 in round 11 on 43. True average of 81.1, so I think huge value in draft leagues. I'd happily pick him up at even an 86 to an 88.
Especially as a forward.
As a forward, I'd pick him up in the mid to high 80s, just well ahead of that 75 mark. And if you got him at 85, people are going to look at last year's average, not even a true average. You pick up an 85, I think you'll be happy. There's at least a 10%. 10 points possible.
Yeah,
on
exactly.
The
You
plus
got to look
side.
at the growth factor. What's his potential? His potential output's probably around 95 to 100.
If you pick him at 85, you're getting him 10 ahead of where he was, 5 ahead of his true average. I think he's not going to average you much less than 85 anyway, but he has that 10 points benefit to get to a 95, I think.
He has a scope to go 100 plus.
He does.
If he plays midfield all year, which I think is unlikely, given
Clarko might.
He's
throw
only
him
ever
in-
done
he'll
it
be
for
in the
like
mix.
6 to 8 games. He's never actually played an entire year in midfield. And I'd love to see him get the reins to be able to just literally go and dominate a midfielder.
Track him through the preseason, but again, he's averaged 87.3 his last 7 rounds and 90.75 his last 4 rounds. So his last 4 rounds, 98, 91, 112, and a 62. So still that little bit inconsistent, but he can knock out some great games.
He definitely can.
So otherwise, draft relevance, Old Man Henderson, I would avoid 94.8. He's a champion, and I say old man, he's only like 30, 31. So
he's been at like 18 clubs.
but again, he had a good start to last year. People remember that. Old Man Henderson actually averaged 79.66 the last 9 rounds when Warple went big the last 7.
Yeah.
So for me, I would just avoid Henderson. Even at a 94.8 average, I would just leave him in draft leagues, let him slide through the keeper, get someone else.
Get someone with upside.
I don't see any upside to Henderson. Daniel Howe is a good one. DPP relevant this year. He's a defender mid. Averaged 73.6. Only played 12 games. But if he gets a good role, Howe could be one that actually gets you like a nice little 80 average as a defender, which is all you need.
Especially in deep drafts, I think he's valuable.
Yep. And basically, Isaac Smith, Bruce, Shields, you get what you get for those guys. There's nothing special.
Liam Shields, if he could ever stop tagging and actually nail down an accumulation. Here's Liam Shields in a nutshell is when he gets given the reins to do whatever the hell he wants,
He can be good.
He can be super damaging.
But he'll be one of the first that Clarko will give him a role.
And he's always a role player. He
he's
plays
a good
a role.
role.
He'll play
He's a
inside.
good-
He'll play outside. He'll be a tagger.
He's a good role player. He's great for their team. But crap for Supercoach.
Annoying as hell, especially in draft. I've picked him up so many times in draft.
Oh.
And then he'll go on these runs of like 100 plus scores. And then he'll bust out a 40 and
Or
a 50.
even
And
some
like,
seasons he averages you like 80 or 75, and then he goes to 90, and then he goes down, and then he averages 95.
Every
and
year's
it's like,
different
what
with
the hell?
Liam Shields.
Yeah.
Smith, I don't see any value in picking up a Smith.
No, he gets you a lot of 80s.
Great for
Basically,
their team,
300s.
but, yeah.
He got 300s all 110 for so Isaac Smith. Averaged 91 for the last 7 rounds, but here's the thing though. Isaac Smith averages 87 in wins and 79 in losses.
He's a downhill skier.
A little bit.
But he also, I mean, he gets his big points from running goals, and he sort of trailed off that. Like when Hawthorn were in their prime, they were tagging Smith heavily because his run was so damaging.
You know why he trailed off a little bit, Chris? It's because he missed that goal after the siren. He's been haunted ever since. He can't kick a goal anymore. Every time he's like, I missed. I shouldn't have laughed.
That's super mean, but also super accurate.
Super accurate. The last one I want to keep a note on, we've mentioned him already, is Tim O'Brien. A real smoky. He's a defender forward option, which gives him that good swing. Smoky for draft, not so much for standard. We
came on late.
We start off with standard and go a little bit more draft, so if you are still with us, I appreciate that. 16 games, average 71.7. He was picked 28 for them.
Yep.
So he's one of those guys that's been in the system.
Play footy.
He's been in the system a bit longer. He's got great hands on him. He averaged 85.8 his last 5 rounds. He's 25. He's 193 centimeters. One of those development players. He was a fairly high pick
with Gunston.
Well, he was a fairly high pick. I think he's starting to find his own way now.
Yeah.
And I actually rate Tim O'Brien as a defender forward swing. I see him averaging you. He could average you 80 to 85 throughout the year as that good swing option. And for draft, throw him on the bench. He's a good cover for both ends, and I think he could actually do really well this year.
Yep, I like it. I like it a lot.
Yeah, you actually rate him as well.
I know. I bet definitely a great bench option.
Yeah, I wouldn't put him on field. No, but as for bench, he could average you an 80 to 85.
Yeah, but like that's the great thing about having defender forwards on your bench in standard is that you can cover both sides on injury.
Yeah, and then free up more for your midfield.
Absolutely.
But that wraps up the Hawthorn podcast. Look, I know there's been a little bit of strategy, and we did go off topic a little bit on parts, but again, we're just trying to give you a little bit of insight on different ways of thinking and different ways to sort of strategize.
That's it. And look, thank you very much for listening.
Thank you. Until next time.
Cheers.
Bye.